Happy New Year's Eve. It's December 31st, 2018. I'm your host and friend, Jonathan Frederick. Today's episode is special for more than one reason. Firstly, it is the last episode of 2018, the last one. Not only that, but we just passed the 60 episode mark, or this past Friday's episode of Fantastic Friday.
Keep looking for what you want to be doing, the value you can bring to the world, to the marketplace, and find a way to get it done. Let's face it, nobody is going to do business with you. No one's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, or because you need the money, or even because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you. They're going to do business from you because they believe they will be better off by doing so.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another inspiring episode of the Heart Healthy Hustle podcast. Today's episode is number 61, and we are with a special guest today, Bob Burg. If you've ever heard of the Go Giver books or the Go Giver podcast, then you know Bob Burg. Bob Burg shares information on topics vital to the success of today's business person. He speaks for corporations and associations internationally, including Fortune 500 companies, franchises, and numerous direct sales organizations. Bob regularly addresses audiences ranging in size from 50 to 16,000, sharing the platform with notables including today's top thought leaders, broadcast personalities, Olympic athletes, and political leaders, including a former U.S. president. Although for years he was best known for his book Endless Referrals, over the past few years it's his business parable, The Go Giver, co-authored with John David Mann, that has captured the imagination of his readers. The Go Giver, a Wall Street and BusinessWeek bestseller, has sold over 850,000 copies. Since its release, it has consistently stayed in the top 25 on 800 CEO Reads Business Book Bestsellers list. The book has been translated into 22 languages, and it was rated number 10 on Inc. magazine's list of the most motivational books ever written. And it was on HubSpot's 20 most highly rated sales books of all time. Bob is the author of a number of books on sales, marketing, and influence, with total book sales of well over 1 million copies. Bob is also an advocate, supporter, and defender of the free enterprise system, believing that the amount of money you make is directly proportional to how many people you serve. He's also unapologetic animal fanatic and served on the board of directors of Furry Friends Adoption and Clinic in his town of Jupiter, Florida. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jonathan. Great to be with you.
Great to have you. Bob, we start out the show with a favorite success quote. So what would that be for you?
I would say if there are phrases that I find myself using and keeping in mind, it might be that money is simply an echo of value, which is a reminder that what it's really all about is focusing on others and focusing on bringing value to others, bringing value to the marketplace. And that if we put that first, if we put the relationships first and put what we can bring to others first, the money will take care of itself.
One of my biggest struggles is I'm working with this podcast, putting out all this content, and really just trying to be a curious learner and present questions that my audience would have for the guests, such as yourself. I'm trying to find a way to, I guess you could say, build a living out of it. You know, you could call that monetization, but it's interesting because I feel like it must be that the value I'm providing to people who decide to listen to this podcast is either not high enough, or I'm just impatient, and it's perhaps a combination of many factors there.
Well, what is the strategy that you've been using to monetize it?
Well, I haven't been implementing one yet.
And that's it too. That's part of it. You know, it's not magic. It's not just provide great value and that's it. You've got to have a strategy for doing so. So there's a certain way to have a podcast, and if you want to be directly monetizing from the podcast itself. And there are several models to be able to do that. And fortunately, there are some great teachers out there. That's what they teach, how to have a podcast, how to monetize a podcast.
Yes.
So like anything else, there's a system that goes through that. And like anyone building any business, to me, it's a great idea to, if you have a certain goal, a certain desire, to find the system, seek out the information, seek out who has that system. What is the system? It's the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key being predictability, right? If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired result of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and do A consistently, and you'll get the desired results of B. I have no question, based on the work that you're doing and the people you're serving and the information you're providing, that you could monetize your podcast. But you do have to have a strategy, a system for doing so.
Yes, and I'm really excited to have you say that because you are the go-giver. And in your book, Go Giver, Sell More, you talk about the importance of having an others focus. And you really harp on that importance to create a win-win scenario. So what does an others focus look like? And can you share a story of a situation where you implemented this to create a win-win?
The basic premise of all of the books is that shifting your focus, and this is the key, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing value to others. Understanding that doing this is not only a nice way, a pleasant way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. Why? Let's face it, nobody is going to do business with you. No one's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, or because you need the money, or even because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you. They're going to do business from you because they believe they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And in a free market-based economy, and when I say free market, I simply mean no one is forced to do business with anyone else. Yeah. In this kind of market-based economy, that basically dictates that the salesperson or entrepreneur has got to place their focus on pleasing that person, bringing value to that person in a way that that person sees it as being of value. This is why we say that what you need to do is move, not you, but what one needs to do is move from an I focus or me focus, where it's all about ourselves, to an other focus, where it's all about bringing that exceptional value to that other person.
The fact that you right away with confidence said that I would need to integrate a strategy for monetization shows that you can have an others focus and still have a monetized business that is others focused, very giving, and simultaneously a win-win for each party involved. Is that correct?
It's the only way you can do it. You can only, again, in a free market-based economy, the only way you can profit is by pleasing another person. There's a very basic law of economics that states that people will exchange their money for that which they feel is of greater value than the money they're exchanging it for. Okay, so the only way you can have a sustainably profitable business, I mean, someone can cheat someone or rip someone off or something like that and make an instant profit, but they're not going to be in business long. They may be in jail before long, but they certainly won't be in business very long. The only way you can have a sustainably profitable business is by focusing on bringing value to other human beings. It's the only way. So it's not a matter of you can be other focused and make a profit as though the two are by nature opposites. No, it's the only way you can.
Powerful. This is good. What's one question, Bob, that you wish interviewers would ask you? What's a question you wish, man, I wish someone would just ask me that once in a while?
Well, there isn't, because if there was a question that I wish people would ask, it would be because I feel that it can add, that it would add value to the interview, that it would add value to the listener. So, what we basically do is we suggest that there are certain things that depending upon what the goal is of the interviewer, of the host, and I know with you, I happen to know you, that you have a major focus on bringing value to your audience. It comes across in everything you do. So I wouldn't leave a question to chance if it was something I definitely wanted to be asked.
Got it. Okay. So Bob, for the young professional who is worried about bills and getting their money right, if you only had a minute with them, what would you say to them? Maybe it's your nephew or somebody that you care to see do well. What would you want to say to them?
Well, I'd say that to learn everything you can about how you're going to make your business successful. In other words, to just go into business having bills to pay and not having a plan is financial suicide. And it doesn't help you serve the market. It certainly doesn't help you. So, I would probably ask the question, do you have a system? Are you prepared to go into business knowing what's ahead of you? You can never know exactly what's ahead, of course, but knowing the basics of what's ahead based on the experiences of other people who've been there and done that and have documented the information. So I'm not a big believer in going into some things by the seat of your pants. I'm a much bigger believer in getting the information first. Then once you have enough to start, then it's a matter of not waiting. It's going ahead and doing it. You can't wait till everything's perfect or you'll never get going. But you certainly have to have enough knowledge to go in there and, have a reasonable chance of succeeding.
100%. And without going down the rabbit trail of, go to all the conferences, read all the books, invest in yourself, what's the quickest ROI to find a system that may be implementable? If somebody was seeking out systems, where should they look first?
Right. And it's a great question. I mean, I think that what you do is based upon what you do for a living. You do a search, you find out who are the people who are teaching the best system, the systems that work. And when you explore them and investigate them, you also want to make sure that there's a congruency between how they teach and what you would be willing to do. Someone can have a system that works, and there are different systems that will work, that will get you from point A to point B. But there are certain things and I'm not talking about ethically or morally. I'm just saying in terms of the action needing to be taken that you won't do. Okay, it's just incongruent with your style. So you want to make sure that the person from whom you're taking this course or reading their book or whatever it is you're doing, that you're learning from, that you're investing your time, energy, and money in, that it's congruent with your style, where it's legal, ethical, and moral, and also that the main focus is on bringing value to the customers, understanding that's where it really begins and ends.
Okay, I'm just letting that soak in for a minute.
And by the way, aside from, because I don't think it's a matter of going to all the seminars or reading all the books, but I think it's determining what seminars and or books, what have you, outside of your specific discipline, outside of the job you're in, will also be helpful. So in other words, you've got people who, if they're specializing in, let's say, financial well-being, your prosperity or something, like a Randy Gage or David Nagel or people like that, even though your business may be something totally different, that might be a great one for you to go to, or at least read their books or listen to their podcast, because that may be an area where you really need to work on the abundance mindset, as opposed to, in getting over some of the scarcity mindset that you may have. Don't though take so many courses and read so many books, or well, you can hardly ever read too many books, but don't take so many courses, investing money in so many courses and going here and there and doing this in place of doing the work you need to be doing to build your business.
Yeah, so be very purposeful in those selections.
Exactly.
Bob, how do you stay relevant? How do you adapt your business, stay ahead of the curve? You've been in the space that you're in for many years, and I'm curious to know, what books do you turn to? Or is it Russell Brunson? Is it a seminar? Like, where do you go to find how to remain relevant and impactful in the context of these different social media platforms rising up?
Well, I'm an avid reader. I love to read, and I learn a lot from reading. And typically, it's sales, marketing, personal development, and I can learn from everyone, and I enjoy that very much. In terms of technology, I made a big mistake earlier in my career. I was probably 10 years into my career when, and again, I'm 60 years old, so I was doing this well before the internet really became a thing, and it built up a successful speaking practice. But then technology began to really become a thing, and I'm not really technically oriented, and it wasn't something I wanted to do. And I really got a little bit overconfident and said, you know what, I don't have to worry about that. My clients will keep working with me and so forth. And it just wasn't so. And so my business really crumbled, and it was a real mistake that I didn't want to change. And, what's funny when talking about change, that's one of those things where in the personal development movement, it's one of those, I call it the political correctness of the personal development movement, where there are certain things that are just supposed to be known fact. People say things like, change is great, change is wonderful, embrace change. Well, the problem is I hate change. By my nature, I don't like change. I like to get good at something and then stay with it. But that's not life. That's not how it works. So I still don't like change, but I learned a big lesson that it didn't matter whether I liked it or not. I had to be willing to do it. And so, fortunately, my business partner, Kathy Tajanel, is a genius when it comes to technology. And she is able to help me to have a pretty big presence on social media and utilize technology in our business, even though, as far as understanding the zeros and the ones, I still have no idea. But I certainly know enough about technology to be able to use it. And it's now a very, very important and lucrative part of our business. So, that was certainly a big lesson for me.
With a desire to talk more about accepting change and using it to your advantage to thrive in your business and life, how, when you realize, what happened? What was the situation, the realization that happened when you said, I messed up, I should have implemented this sooner, I should have been willing to accept that this is the way it was going?
Oh yeah, well, my business just dropped off. There was one client that I'd been working with, and we all know you shouldn't put most of your eggs in one basket. But I had such one client that was very, very lucrative for me, and I just wanted to believe it wasn't going to end. That was younger me, and so and it did. They actually made a move toward becoming much more technologically involved and dropped me like a hot potato because I didn't keep up. Not only was I not ahead of the curve, I was far behind the curve. And so, my business dwindled. I had to rebuild. That was painful.
Going back in time then, can you share a bio version of 20-year-old Bob to present day Bob?
Well, that wasn't 20-year-old Bob. That was 40-year-old Bob or whatever. And I guess
I'm really curious to hear how you got from your 20s to where you are now and just some of the weird twists and turns in your journey.
Well, the 20-year-old Bob, and that's, where you have the question, what one piece of advice, would you give to your 20-year-old self? And this is one that I don't even have to think about. This is very, very easy for me. And I would probably tell the 60-year-old Bob, which I am now, soon to be 61, would definitely tell.
Well, hold on, Bob, I have to interject because that's actually the last question of the show. I usually save it for the very end if you're willing to hold that one.
Oh, sure.
Awesome. If you can think back at what your life looked like at the time, if how things were going personally, personal life, or financially as well, what it was looking like, and the restless, if you can remember back to that restless feeling of what's next for me. Once
I got out of college, I started as a broadcaster. I was in radio doing sports, and then I was in television doing news for I was the late night news guy for a very small ABC affiliate in the Midwestern United States. And, it wasn't really long before I knew that it really wasn't something that I was going to make a career out of. And so I like to say I graduated into sales. The challenge was I knew nothing about sales, knew nothing about selling. So and the training at the company where I was at was negligible at best. So I pretty much stumbled for a few months. And then I was in a bookstore and came across a couple of books on selling. And that just changed things for me because I brought those books. I didn't even know that there were such a thing as books on selling. From all I knew, sales was you knocked on doors, you made phone calls, you went in, you talked about your product, and you hoped to get a sale, which of course is totally opposite of what selling is about in terms of talking about your product. But so I studied. There were books by Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins. And I remember studying these books at night after I'd get home from work, and I would just, for hours and hours, I would read, I'd pour through them. I'd be highlighting and underlining and rehearsing what they said and memorizing. It was a great education. And within a few weeks, my sales began to improve significantly. And really, what was the difference? Well, now I had a system, right? And we were talking about systems earlier. And that was a difference maker for me. The process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. And so,
100%, yeah. 100%.
From there, I worked my way to sales manager of another company. This is over the course of a few years. And then I began to speak on what was working for me. And eventually one thing led to another and began speaking and writing.
One of those books by Tom Hopkins, How to Master the Art of Selling, was that one of them?
Yeah, that was the book by Tom that at the time that was very big. It's still big. I mean, it's a classic.
I have it here. It's a fat book, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever study people? What's your opinion of modeling? Like Larry King back then, did you look to him to find cues on how to be a better broadcaster?
Yeah. Oh, sure. I would watch all of them to kind of see what they did and try to learn from them. I'm an ongoing student, when it comes to people and so forth. And Larry King wrote a great book on how to be a good interviewer, which I bought and read. Found it very helpful.
Do you remember the name of that?
Something, I actually still have the book, but it's in the other part of my library in the house, and I don't have it right in front of me.
No worries. I'll Google it. I wanted to mention the name of the Hopkins book for anyone interested in trying to build a sales system. It's a great place to start.
Yeah, How to Master the Art of Selling. Absolutely. It's some of what he's talking about. The principles are still totally today, just totally sound. The basic principles are absolutely sound.
What's one question that you would encourage your audience to ask of themselves?
You start with checking your premises and you ask why. What's happening right now? What's going on right now that would keep me not acting as opposed to taking the action I know I need to take? Is it that there's action I know I need to take and I'm just not taking it? Or do I not know what action to take? Now, when you ask the question of yourself, now there's two different answers. Two different strategies. If you know the action you need to take and you're not taking it, now you need to ask yourself why you're not. What's stopping you? What payoff is it to you that you're procrastinating and not taking the action that you know that you should be taking? If it's a matter of you're not taking the action because you don't know what the right action is, well, now you need to get help in terms of the how-to aspect. So we always want to start with checking our premises and asking those why questions, really self-discovering.
Okay, so we got the book. You got the book title here from the Larry King one was called The Secrets of Good Communication, published in 1995 by Larry King and Bill Gilbert.
Yeah, I think the actual title is How to Talk to Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere. Yeah, Secrets of Good Communication.
Right on. Okay, How to Talk to Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere. Great. With your expertise in sales, Bob, I'm really curious to hear, there's no one size fits all, of course, but in terms of tactical approaches to this, let's say I am wanting to ask people for help with growing this podcast or with growing my business. What's the best method of doing this?
Well, again, I think it depends. Who is this person that you're talking to? Is this someone who you have a relationship with where they know, like you? Okay. And then are they someone who, do they know how to, is this someone who knows how to build a podcast, or do they know how to find information on how to do so? I think, again, all the questions that you ask yourself regarding this allow you to come to the correct conclusions, based on the question and the answer. So it might be someone who says, well, this person, Joe Smith or Mary Jones, she's an expert on helping people monetize their podcast, so-and-so. You might want to call her. Great. And, then you find out either what she charges or what her system is that she's, however that works. Or it might be that someone says the best thing you can do is go to, what's the conference? I went to it when I first began podcasting.
Podcast Movement.
Might be that one.
There is a couple others.
There are a couple of them, and I bet either one of them would probably, you'd meet people there that you're going to learn how exactly to go A to Z. But you find out first if that is what you're going to be learning. And then there are people who they monetize their podcast, but they do it in a way that you might not want to. Whether it's doing it just through ads, whether it's doing it through guests, whether it's doing it through selling additional products on it, or what have you. So there's different ways, and I've seen some other ways that I don't like as much as others. So I think, again, that goes into what we were talking about earlier, making sure that the way they are teaching it is congruent with how you'd be willing to do it. But but when you're asking someone to help you grow the podcast, how are they going to help you grow it other than by giving you the information that they may have, or now it might be that they're also willing to get the word out on the podcast. That's fine too. I'm sure there's a lot of people who would do that for you because you've probably built up some great relationships. By the same token, they have their own things they're building too. So they might not, they're probably not going to take a ton of time to do it and so forth. So, again, we're talking about the real world. there's different situations. There's no real one size fits all answer. It's a fine question. In fact, I think it's a fine question because I think it's good for everyone to hear that as they're building their business, the questions are the best way to go about it. You know, when a question comes up, how do I do this? There's usually a few more questions that we need to ask ourselves before we come up with the solution or the possible solutions.
Are you talking more about self-awareness type of questions?
Yeah, well, situational awareness. It goes back to when you asked that great question about if you find you're not taking action, on what you need to be doing. What do you say to yourself? Well, what you say to yourself depends on what the real situation is. When you say, what do you say to yourself if you're not taking action? Well, the not taking action is the symptom. That's not the cause. And treating a symptom is, as you're a health expert, you treat a symptom, you're not really treating anything. It's just temporary. You want to get to the cause. So the symptom is that you're not taking action. The cause is either you don't know what action to take, even though you'd be willing to take it, or the cause is, maybe you're in a depression. The cause is maybe you're tired. The cause is maybe you're down on yourself, or, what have you. I mean, there could be a bunch of different things. Once you know the cause, now you can apply the correct solution as opposed to just putting a Band-Aid on something.
Yeah. Not just asking, but asking the correct questions. So how do you get your books into the library, by the way? Is that a voluntary thing?
I think the publisher's sales team takes care of that. I never really tried to get my books into libraries, but they often found the books. But I don't necessarily suggest that. I think it's good to go. But I guarantee you can do a Google search right now and ask, how does a self-published author get their books into libraries? And you'll see a list of libraries and contact people and so forth. Again, there's a system for everything. I guarantee you there's someone teaching a course on how to get your book into libraries.
Yeah.
One of the best, and I bet this person probably has this in his book. I haven't read the book for a long time, but he comes out with a new edition a lot of times. His name is John Kremer, Kremer. And he wrote a very famous book, actually a manual called 1001 Ways to Market Your Book.
Right, bookmarket.com for that. Okay. The reason I asked, I was just curious because I found a couple of your books through the library system, which is really, I really appreciate it. So I didn't know if you had anything to do with that, but it's, what's it like seeing your book sell over 1 million copies?
It's good. Nice feeling. It didn't happen by itself. It's a combination of all the ambassadors out there who've been so great as far as promoting the book and buying it as gifts. And of course, it's been out for 10 years now, and I've never stopped doing interviews on the books.
I love that.
And so, I still do probably 4, 5, 6 interviews a week. And I continue to, post. I have my podcast and the Facebook Live weekly program. So I continue to promote and keep that part of the engine going. And then all the great people who are out there buying it and gifting it.
So Bob, I want to ask you a couple of questions on relationships.
Sure.
With all of the traveling, I don't know what your schedule is, but I imagine at least in your past, there's been some chapters of your life where you travel quite often. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As I get older, I'm doing it less now, but yeah, I spent a lot of time on the road.
While you're in those situations, how do you, and I'm not saying this from a place of fear, I mean it in the most tactical way, how do you watch your back in the business world without judging people or without putting up unnecessary walls? Because you can't be, you have a lot of connections with a lot of people in your network, so you can't be super open to, every new opportunity. How do you protect your business, protect yourself against anybody with malintentions?
Well, there are a couple different questions there. One of them is, how do I keep from being taken advantage of? And I think the other one is, how do I say no to opportunities when I'm always approached by people with opportunities, many of those opportunities really good opportunities. So let's look at the first one first, as far as not being taken advantage of. I think as human beings, we have common sense. And we need to exercise that common sense. There's certainly nothing about being a go-giver, if you will, that equates with being a doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial. So, my feeling is I pretty much trust most people until they give me a reason not to, but I'm certainly not going to purposely put myself in a position of trusting someone who hasn't earned that trust if I have something to lose in that situation. You know what I'm saying? So I think common sense is in thinking things through is very important. As far as saying no to people, unfortunately, that's part of life. You've got to be able to say no to most opportunities in order to focus on that which is the most productive. So it's saying no in a way that always honors the other person and is always done with tact and kindness and respect, so that other person knows that it's not something personal. It's the situation itself that you're saying no to.
That being said, I appreciate you deciphering my question into two separate ones. Do you have a book that you would recommend that I can read to increase communication effectiveness? Is there any off the top of your head that you really like?
Wow. Well, I would always start with Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Have you read that one?
Yes, about 5 times.
And that's a book to keep reading every so often, and every so often just pick it up and turn to a page and read a chapter.
I say that 5 times, less of a braggadocious and more of a I still need to learn more from it kind of a tone.
We all do. That's a book that that you repeat it. You never really stop reading for the rest of your life. And there are other great books such as that. As a Man Thinketh, and a wonderful book is Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, written in 1960. But there are, just tremendous books on communication. It's just hard to come up. I'm looking at my library right here, which is, huge just in this room. And there are so many books. Study Abraham Lincoln and his communications.
Oh.
They were wonderful. Ben Franklin, the same. And yeah, just so many fantastic people to learn from.
Have you read Team of Rivals?
That one I have not read.
Yeah, I think you'd really enjoy that, especially if you were recommending.
I'm sure I would. I would love it. From him, I have a whole book on just letters that Abraham Lincoln has written.
How would you recommend a lonely entrepreneur find connection with other like-minded individuals?
Well, I guess I would ask where do you think you would go to do that? Where would I suggest a lonely engineer or a lonely doctor go? Somewhere where you can have like-minded people around you that you feel will be energizing to be around. There are conferences where there are entrepreneurs there, and you'll probably be able to both encourage each other and commiserate with each other, at these conferences. So you do a search on entrepreneurial conferences. Or it might be as simple as joining a local civic club or organization where there are other entrepreneurs who are there. So, and then, establishing. But remember, you're not establishing a connection with the club or the group, but with the individuals there who you meet.
Yes. What do you do, Bob?
I am actually very much a loner and very much an introvert. And so I don't really, I go to conferences because I want to learn. I don't really go there for the personal connection, but I always make a lot of personal connections. You know what I'm saying? But that's more the result of being there. Go there to make connections.
I'm very similar. I've noticed, at least for me, I started to feel a little isolated, and I didn't like that. So it can isolate you when you're a proactive individual, because there's a natural alienation process that takes place. Certain friendships that don't align with what you're doing can be a trying time, but it's great when you're around, like you said, other people who are committed to their goals. Bob, let's jump into the Heart Healthy Hustle round. First category, it's heart. What activity or activities, plural, do you use to care for and strengthen your internal character?
I would say that it is thinking on a constant basis, asking myself if the actions I'm taking are congruent with my values.
Asking yourself if the actions you're taking are congruent with your values.
Yeah, or saying, is the action I'm about to take, or is what I'm about to say to this person, or is what I'm about to do, is it congruent with my values?
Health. How do you maintain your physical health and avoid burnout?
I have a personal trainer. She comes in 6 mornings a week at 6:30, and 3 days a week we do cardio, and 3 days a week we do resistance. She also prepares all my meals in advance for the day. As much as I really don't want to be working out, I really don't like working out, and I'd like to eat junk food all day. Utilizing Diane's services, I'm able to create an environment where I stay healthy.
I've shared this before, but the biggest thing I've learned from interviewing people on my podcast is what you just said. You create an environment that you know you can thrive in, even when you learn your susceptibilities, and then you find a way to create an environment and implement systems and routines that can allow you to thrive, even in the areas that you're more susceptible to eat ice cream versus a bowl of fruit cup.
Yeah, well, it's like I don't keep ice cream and I don't keep Oreo cookies and I don't keep donuts in my house. Now, those are three of my favorite foods. those are food groups to me. But I don't keep them in the house because I will eat them if they're there.
It's a very simple thing, but it's very powerful. So for the last category, it's hustle. Why do you do what you do?
I still love it. Yeah,
that's powerful. The final question, as I mentioned before, I asked you if you would be willing to save your answer for the end.
Sure.
I call it the park bench paradigm. If you're walking in your local park, imagine 25-year-old Bob going through a lot in your life at this time. Just put yourself back in those shoes if you can. And present day, Bob Burg, with all the successes that you have under your belt and all the people that you've encouraged with your work, can go up, sit on the bench with your past self, and put your hand on your own shoulder and just say something. What would you tell him to do or not to do, and why? Sure.
And by the way, when you say with all the successes under my belt, a lot of failures under my belt too.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's, understand that is to everyone else who's listening, as you're building your career, there's going to be failures too. And that doesn't make you unsuccessful. Okay. You just keep getting back up and going and go to where you want to be. Anyway, what I would say to that 20 to 25-year-old Bob Burg is first of all, I would say, shut up. And by the way, I never say shut up to anyone. We weren't even allowed to say that growing up in my house. But I would say to the 20 to 25-year-old Bob Burg, shut up and listen. Understand, young Bob Burg, that not only do you not know it all, you don't know near what you think you know, and most of what you are sure you do know ain't so. Because at that age, I thought I had it figured out. I thought I understood human nature, how people operated, how they acted, how the world worked, what was this and what was that. And so I look back, and so much of what I just, absolutely was certain of, and it just wasn't true.
Yeah, always be a student and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful. That's the best approach to podcasting. If anyone out there is interested in podcasting, particularly if you are younger, under 40, 50, 60 years old, if you're podcasting or broadcasting in some manner, it would probably benefit you to ask a good question and then listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's exciting you currently? What's the project getting you out of bed in the morning?
We're putting together a new video series that we're going to sell over the internet called, one's going to be Genuine Influence, the Go-Giver Way. The other is going to be Endless Referrals, the Go-Giver Way, which are based on two books I have out that we're turning into a big course that we'll sell online. So very excited about that. Also continuing to build our team of Go-Giver speakers, and we have our Go-Giver Entrepreneurs 2-day workshop in Orlando that we hold every few months. So those things all excite me very much.
Fantastic. Before we go, how can my audience connect with you?
The best way is to just go to thegogiver.com without the hyphen, thegogiver.com, and they can pretty much check out everything there from books and chapters they can read first to see if they like it. Then they can click through if they do. They can subscribe to my podcast, the Go-Giver podcast, and there are a whole bunch of other resources that they can check out if they'd like.
That sounds good. What's one word you would leave with a proactive young professional who is in a restless chapter of life?
In a restless chapter of life, keep looking for what you want to be doing, the value you can bring to the world, to the marketplace, and find a way to get it done.
Congratulations on making it to the end of this episode. What about this episode stood out to you? Next, I need your help sharing this show. I want this podcast to impact and reach 6,000 people per episode by August 31st, 2019. And I want us to reach 15,000 people per month by March 29th, 2020. Have you been enjoying multiple episodes of The Heart Healthy Hustle? I'm thrilled to share with you an exclusive invitation to join our new Facebook community. To get to know other Heart Healthy Hustlers, simply go to thehearthealthyhustle.com/Facebook, where you can expect to see different members of our community being featured weekly in Facebook Live calls. I appreciate all of your love and support, and I will see you in the next episode. As always, be generous on every occasion. There is a story for you, and live wide open.